Welcome to the third part of the Health and Wealth series of Coffee with Alissa. Dan, let's start with another quick review of our first session, the dimensions of stress.
So we talked about the dimensions of stress. Is stress good or bad? But really it comes down to the three dimensions of stress: physical, biochemical, mental, emotional, which I kind of combine into relational, which we will get into today. By managing those three levels of stress, you really optimize your body's ability to get healthy and stay in a healthy state of adaptation, right? Which is, we'd say, the simplest definition of health.
Can you define these two words, connection and separation?
If you look at a puzzle piece, right, or a puzzle board, you got 1,000-piece puzzle board. If things are connected, they're in the correct order. If you have a disconnection or a separation, if those puzzle pieces start to get out of alignment, or you have a couple pieces on the floor because you were doing it with your young children, whatever the case may be. Well, now you might have the same picture, but it's going to be a much more distorted view.
So human beings are naturally relational, and I truly believe we're all uniquely designed for a purpose and that we journey through life discovering our mission. Can you elaborate on purpose, the why am I here, and then mission, which is, what's the result of living out my purpose?
We talked a lot about this idea of adaptation and, our ability. It's a state of being, right? Health is a state of being. The World Health Organization defines health as an optimal state of physical, mental, social well-being. I always like to add spiritual. We are relational beings. That's why, you look at something like, the pandemic that happened over the past several years. When we went into isolation is not healthy for any individual. That has been proven well before the pandemic. Being isolated from that relationship of other human beings, is significantly detrimental to your social, emotional, and mental well-being. We're designed to be relational, and part of that relationship comes down to this idea of a sense of purpose. We don't explore that idea enough of why am I here? What is my purpose for being here, right? Because life is a gift. So if we're not exploring that idea, that concept, and we start to lose that sense of purpose, or we never, fully define what that sense of purpose is, well, then I think we become disconnected, we become separated from it. And the more we're separated from it, that causes more disorder, more chaos. But then once we start defining what that is, then I think the next step becomes, well, what does that look like? What is the result of me living an on-purpose life? That's the vision, and that's what you as a financial planner, and I think I as a healthcare professional, chiropractor, help people see.
As I think further into that, it's like, well, who gets to participate in this mission? Is it just me?
We have this idea of, our purpose. So why am I here? And ultimately, I want to get to the vision. But how do we get there? That's the plan, right? That's the mission. So this idea of purpose, mission, vision. The mission is the plan. So a couple videos ago, we talked about this idea of changing, paradigms, changing our thinking. So this idea of, we don't want to strengthen our weaknesses. No, we want to focus on our strengths, and then bring in. So this kind of goes to this idea of who participates. If you focus on your strengths, recognizing that you're not going to be everything to everyone. So just by coming to, an understanding that you're not going to be everything to everyone, giving yourself that grace, I think, from a mental, emotional state of health and relational state of health, has a huge impact on your ability to be healthy. And so this idea of who else gets to participate in your mission and ultimately achieving the results of your vision, you want to find other individuals who maybe have the strengths that you don't have, and you start putting them on your team. When we look at mental, emotional health, mental health is so important. And I think that's part of the idea. We put this concept last. If we don't have, we don't have our health, we don't have much of anything. But this idea of mental health, if we're not defining these things, from a very early age. But then as we continue throughout our life, I think we do all get, we'll hit these walls or these obstacles where, things start becoming disconnected, right? We talked about connection versus separation. We start to feel separated, disconnected from our purpose, because we get kind of stuck on the hamster wheel. And that's where we can start to, get things like anxiety, like, depression, whatever the case may be.
Can you leave us with 3 key takeaways from the topics that we discussed today? And then I'd love to just have a little bit more conversation about some things that I pulled from.
Ask the tough questions. That's point number 1. Staying engaged, I think, is very important. Now, again, different people, you have introverts versus extroverts. You can be an introvert and, have 1 or 2 friends that you absolutely, you can have over for a movie night or just, get together and play some cards. Making sure that you're staying engaged with those relationships is so incredibly important for your relational health. And then ultimately, becoming a grateful person, grateful for everything that we have. I mentioned at the beginning of this, life is a gift. It doesn't have, you don't have to be, the Jeff Bezoses and the Elon Musks of the world to be happy, right? The amount of money that you have really has very little to do with your mental, emotional health. Comparison is the thief of all joy, and stop comparing yourselves with where your colleagues are or where your family members are, and ultimately be thankful for what you have and where you're at. That is what is going to allow you to truly be authentic in the relationships that you have.
Just as we've been talking, we filmed these 3 videos. I just, I had taken some notes about the things that stuck out to me that really compare to the wealth building side. And I think the first thing that popped in my mind, you mentioned it in our first episode, was just our cultural need for instant gratification. So that obviously affects our health and well-being in ways that you discussed, but we see it affect people's relationships with wealth because, everyone wants to participate in market rises, but it's really hard to stay steady, during downturns and volatility. But, like anything, right? If we want to grow our wealth over the long term, we have to stress, as you mentioned, adding that healthy stress to our portfolios. The second thing that jumped out to me was you talked about, really putting a great team in place around you. So you talked about it in a healthcare perspective, but we stress that on our end too, right? To put your financial team in place. So, we've got a financial advisor who, does planning. You have an accountant, you have an estate lawyer, right? So all these things are in place. All these people are communicating, and you're communicating as the client, right? What your vision and your goals are. And, our teams are the ones that help implement. Lastly, and you just mentioned it, and I jotted it down because this is a quote that I also use all the time, is, that comparison is the thief of joy. And, we're all subject to it. We all find ourselves in those spots where we're comparing ourselves to other people. We use the term like keeping up with the Joneses, right? We might, put ourselves in a bad position to, have that great picture or that fancy house or something. But it's really important to just develop that sound financial plan and vision for your life. Instead of always trying to have what people have, but just being content with what you have and continuing to build in accordance with that plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes down to the, it's a mindset, right? Wealth, I truly believe, is a mindset. Just like, health is a state of being, wealth is a state of mind.
And thank you again, Dan. You've just shared a wealth of knowledge with us. We're very appreciative. And to our audience, thank you for watching. If you haven't seen the other videos in the series, I would encourage you to visit our YouTube channel and view them. And I look forward to seeing you next month.